Hello there, people of the internet. Welcome to another episode of Driving the Cougar. This particular one I'm going to be uploading on the Mechanic channel in an effort to get people to come over to the Mechanic channel. So the Cougar, she's a 1986 Mercury Cougar. She's got a Ford 5.0 in it and a Ford AOD transmission. Nothing overly special about her, but I've been driving her around for a very, very long time. I picked her up for like 400 bucks. Pulled her out of my buddy's yard, dropped about 1,200 bucks in getting things up and going with the Cougar, just getting things up and running and getting her on the road. And then I stuck probably about 200,000 miles on it, and the Cougar's got over 300,000 miles at this point. So some of the things are a little bit wore out. Back whenever I'd first gotten the Cougar, I had replaced the radiator, and the radiator had some issues with overheating in the Florida times. Now that I'm like a decade after doing that, I've like put stop leak inside of it and all sorts of different stuff inside of it to try and keep the coolant system working for as long as possible, and the radiator just over time has kind of clogged itself, and various debris from inside of the radiator has caused issues. So I figured it was time to go ahead and get myself a new radiator. Whenever you're getting yourself a new radiator, if you're getting just a cast aluminum one, you want to inspect it, you want to clean it, make sure there's no sand or anything inside of it, because a lot of these are just sand molded. You just want to go over everything and make sure that it is good to go. So the actual removal of the radiator itself from the Cougar is not overly difficult. There's two brackets, and then there's some hoses. You want to make sure that whenever you pull the hoses off of the radiator, you pump all of the muck from the radiator right into your yard, and it's just going to be fantastic. The stop leak inside this thing was copper colored, and it made everything this delightful shade of copper, and now I can't tell what is rust covered and what is copper and what's oil, and it's really making repairs difficult whenever it comes to repairing the coolant system of the Cougar, so probably not the greatest of options there. So after you get your radiator all unlocked and whatnot, pull your fan shroud and your fan, and that's going to make pulling your radiator out significantly easier. There's transmission cooling lines on the system as well that you got to pull off. Most vehicles are going to have some sort of transmission cooling system, and most vehicles are going to have that attached right to your radiator. So I figured while I was working on the Cougar, my trunk lock had been broken for many years at this point, and I kind of relied on opening the trunk by pushing a button inside. So I figured I'd go ahead and I'd swap out that trunk lock. The big issue with the trunk lock that I had gotten was that it was the wrong trunk lock. So I had to do some modifications to it in order to make it fit, and sure enough, I made it fit. Granted, I could not put the locking clip inside of it, but I was able to bolt it down, so it stays well enough for my taste. After I had messed with the trunk lock, I decided to go ahead and toss some seafoam into the engine, and I tossed a little bit, and then a little bit more, and that was probably going to be the adequate amount, so I went ahead and I put in just way too much into that engine, and it was fine. After that, radiator was installed, and I decided to go ahead and take it for a test drive. I brought the seafoam with me, though, just in case anything went wrong, because seafoam fixes absolute everything. So, driving around the Cougar, I got it nice and hot. I got the radiator pressurized. I didn't see any real significant leaks, so everything looked fair enough. I did have a slight leak on my upper radiator hose, so I went ahead and I tightened that hose clamp down. I'm very glad that I did not have a radiator leak on my bottom hose, because I specifically installed that hose clamp in a way to where I have to pull the fan and fan shroud out again if I ever want to get to that, and I did that so I didn't have to lay on the ground, and in hindsight that's probably not the greatest of ideas. So after doing the radiator job, radiator's installed, it looks good, I decided to go ahead and mess with the brakes. The Cougar's brake pads on the front end were definitely getting worn out, and they got wore out to the point where that little metal tab on them that scrapes along the rotor itself. It's kind of like a warning indicator showing you that your brake pads are starting to wear out. That warning indicator started scraping along the rotor a long time ago. So I bent that out of the way and kept driving it. And now there's something metal scraping around in the Cougar's brakes. So I went ahead and I decided to install some new brake pads. And it's quite easy to install these. First thing, you want to make sure that you have a jack that is just way too small, and this particular jack is too small. At the absolute maximum height, I struggle getting that tire off. Like, it's still on the ground. It's just barely high enough for me to be able to yank that thing off of the car. So I kind of made it work, but I definitely need a better jack than what I've got here. You want to make sure that whenever you're pulling off your tire, you use a 4-way tire iron. This way, as you're pulling off the tire, some lug nuts are just super easy and come off without any effort whatsoever, and then other ones you would literally throw out your back. And I'm several days after filming of doing this narration and my back still hurts from this particular job, so probably not the best idea. Pulling caliper bolts, whenever you go pulling those caliper bolts, if they're stuck, I highly recommend having a breaker bar of some kind. This way you can, you know, actually break the bolt inside the caliper and have a much more difficult situation on your hand. But if it works, then that's great. It's a far easier job than the alternative. After that, using a C-clamp to basically fix everything in life is definitely the way to go. Using a C-clamp to compress your piston if you're trying to pull your caliper off and your caliper is like stuck to your rotor, it's far easier to compress that piston to be able to pull the rotor or the caliper off of the rotor than it is to try and force the thing off or hammer the thing off, especially if you have a worn out rotor like what I have on the Cougar and there's a little bit of a lip on the thing. Once that lip develops, it'll like lock the caliper in place. So if you use a C-clamp to compress that piston to significantly give yourself increased space so you can pull that caliper off, then it's going to be a much easier job. After that, you basically just pull out the old brake pads and put in the new brake pads, and while you're doing that, you may as well check the bearings since you don't have a caliper actually on your rotor itself. So just spin your rotor and see how well it spins. If it's got a drive shaft connected to it, it's not going to spin very well. But if it's just a free spinning wheel, then spin it and see how well it spins, and that'll tell you whether or not you have to pack your bearings inside of your wheel hub. This particular one that I filmed, it spun really well, and I didn't necessarily have to pack any bearings, but I still elected to, just because I've got like 200,000 miles on this car, and although it looked pretty good, I still wanted to go and grease those bearings up some. So since it looked pretty good, I didn't exactly grease them the proper way. I just kind of pulled the bearings out, lathered some grease on them, and stuffed some grease, you know, into the rotor itself, and that was about it. The other side that I did not film, I went ahead, since it was a little bit rougher, I did a proper grease packing job on those particular wheel hubs. And so here we are, one fresh radiator inside of the Cougar, and new brake pads, and new fully greased wheel hubs, and all of the other stuff that I did during that particular episode that I can't quite remember off the top of my head. I went ahead and I did a lot of work on the Cougar, and now we get to go ahead and drive it somewhere, and I know exactly where I'm going to drive it. So come along with me and let's go exploring the Cougar. Alright, little bit of a change of plans. I decided to take the Cougar across the state of Florida. So originally I was going to test drive it with like a 15-mile drive, but instead of doing that, I'm going more like 400 miles. So I also did something else. Have a look at what I got going on here. So you'll notice I got a big pile of guns right here where the passenger seat should be. The passenger seat's not there because there's a big pile of guns there instead. And over here, I'm not sure how well you can see that, but you'll notice that the glove box is gone. And I'm sure a lot of you astute people will notice that my windows are closed. Well, I decided to go ahead and take a weekend and tear the Cougar's dash apart in an effort to fix the air conditioning, and the air conditioning was a nightmare. The wiring in this entire thing is just an absolute sketchy storm, like way beyond anything what it is that I was expecting.
Ultimately, the blower motor in this bad boy was bad, so I ended up swapping that out. So we got a new blower motor inside this thing, and I recharged the AC system. I have no idea how bad the Freon leak is inside this thing, but we're going to assume it's not awful because the air conditioning is in fact doing air conditioning things. So I've had this car for like a decade, and for the first time ever, I've got cold blowing air conditioning, and it blows super cold, and it is so nice. Now, the temperature for the radiator is actually pretty good. The thermostat I have in this thing opens at 195, and we're sitting right around there, and we're doing about 70 miles an hour in the Cougar. So I'm willing to bet that this is probably okay. I was worried that the AC running would cause heating issues, but that doesn't look to be the case because I've had the AC running for a straight minute now, and we seem to be doing fine. So now we just get to, I don't know, drive for the next 3.5 hours up to North Florida. So wish me luck, I guess.
All right, a couple of things. Look, everybody, it's Kevin. We love you, Kevin. So the radiator that I got in the Cougar is very literally the cheapest bottom of the barrel aluminum radiator that I could find on eBay that would fit the Cougar. And to be fair, it didn't really fit all that well. So I noticed while I was going about 70, the temperature stayed around 190 to 195. But then I would increase in speed to about 73, and the temperature would start rising. At about 75, the temperature would get to about 200. And although that is very far from overheating the engine on this thing, I'd say overheating is probably more like 230 is whenever you start to really run into some issues. But that's still hotter than I would like. So I'd say with this radiator combined with the 5.0, I would estimate probably about 70 to 75 is the maximum speed that I can do inside this thing without overheating for long durations. That being said, I don't think that I'd want to do faster than that in this old girl anyway. So on top of that, I also went through and I did some wiring stuff. Anyone who's been following my adventures with the Cougar, well, you guys know that my headlights have basically always been hot. Well, guess what? I decided to come down here, and although you guys probably can't see it, this right here is a fuse box. And I went down there to check the fuses because I thought that I blew one for my radio. And whenever I pulled it, I was looking at it, and I just decided to look at the manual that I had, and it was not the right fuse. I was like, oh, okay, this fuse is, significantly higher amperage than what it's supposed to be. And then I looked at another fuse, and I was like, oh, this fuse is wrong too. And so is this one. And so is this one. And it turns out that nearly every single fuse inside of the Cougar's fuse box was incorrect. And most of them allowed more amperage than what was actually called from the factory. So, you know what that means? That means that the wires are going to get hot because they have more amperage going to them. So after 10 years of driving around this car, I finally checked the fuse box down below, and I discovered that the fuse for the headlights, which is what I'm currently spliced into with this toggle switch, that's supposed to have a 15 amp fuse in it. And it had a 30 amp fuse in it. Well, guess what? I stuck the 15 in there, and now the headlights are fine. Only took me a literal decade to figure that out because I literally figured that out today. So got the radiator cooling issue. That's pretty much solved. We got air conditioning in this thing. That is a huge, huge win. And we got the headlights good. This is officially like a regular driving car. Normally with the Cougar, like the way that I've been driving it around and whatnot, it's always had its quirks and it's always had its issues. Like, oh, I can't drive around at night because the headlights get hot. Or, oh, I can't drive around whenever it's too stupidly warm because there's no AC, or just something like that. Well, that is no longer a problem. Also, I'm not sure if I recorded it or not, but I went ahead and I painted the Cougar. Look at how pretty and black and shiny and new looking it is compared to how it's been. I have no idea if I actually recorded that or not, but there you go. It actually looks pretty gosh darn good. Granted, there's some spots on here that I gotta redo, Like if you look back over here, this spot is a little thin. Can't really pick it up on camera. And over here we got some runoff, but there's because my spray gun decided to malfunction while I was in the middle of painting. So there is some stuff that does need touch up, but I think that this right here is definitely one of the more solid wins I've had in terms of the episodes of filming the Cougar or driving the Cougar. So now I'm going to go to the old gun range, which is right over there. I'm going to go blow some stuff up. So thanks for watching, folks. I appreciate your time. Like, subscribe, share. Description below has a link to all sorts of stuff. Go check it out. I don't know if I showed this either. I got right there some LED headlights inside of this thing, because the old glass headlights, they really weren't that great. So LEDs, I still got the glass ones just in case I need like some lower brightness, but yeah, LEDs in the event that I need them. All right, I will see you guys on the next episode.